There we go. Hello, SHL. It's we're back again. I am Rich.
And I'm Akamai.
And we're back for our third episode. And we have a name now that we're going to...
Woohoo!
Yeah. It was suggested by Jenny. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, because our first episode was like almost 2 hours, we're going to go with Too Long Didn't Listen, or TLDL. Because, yeah. So, yeah, there you go. Here's your name. I guess we can just go into some stuff that's going on in the league and some playoffs and some of all that fun stuff. So like last week we talked about Leafs stepping down. And now, with him down, he obviously needed a replacement, and that replacement is Atlas in Winnipeg. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know Atlas well enough to really say a whole lot other than congrats. That's awesome. It's great to see young players, or young users, rather, meaning young to or relatively new to the site, stepping into these big leadership roles. It's that's awesome.
And it is super exciting that Atlas has ascended from Incorrect Atlas to GM Atlas. Hooray!
Yeah, that's good. I don't know enough about him to say like, oh, he's going to be really great at lines, or he's going to be really great at bringing in free agents, or whatever. So I can't really say a whole lot other than congrats and good luck. Best of luck. It's big shoes to fill.
Yep.
And we can also mention that he named his co as well, which is Nereus.
Yeah, and I have never interacted with Nereus personally, aside from sort of the public threads, but good luck to you.
Yeah, Nereus is a goofy dude. He's from my draft class, pretty sure. Yeah, Luke Fleming. He's one of the few guys remaining. And actually, Eggy and I were talking about this because I was going through our draft classes TPE totals, because I was trying to figure out where I kind of fell in. And Nereus has done really well for himself in terms of like getting his TPE up there. We were both kind of surprised that he was as high as he is.
Awesome.
He's quite high TPE. I think he's like 5th in our draft class now, which is pretty good. And yeah, he's like the king of of posting memes, apparently, from what I see anyway. So yeah, there you go. There's your Winnipeg Jets leadership team. And yeah, they're I don't know either of them well enough to be like, oh, they're awesome, or oh, they're terrible. They're just, yeah. So good luck to you two. Hope Winnipeg does well. Hope you guys enjoy being GMs. And I don't know, unless you have anything else to say, we can move on.
Nope, that's it.
Cool. All right, so the next thing we want to talk about is going to be playoffs, because we are still in playoffs. We did, excuse me, we talked about round one last week, and now that round one's over, we can kind of talk about who's moving on and the new matchups. So, did we start with SHL or SMJHL last week? I think we started with SHL, right?
Yep.
So I figure we'll kind of keep that format. All the play-by-plays are done. I'm correct? I'm pretty sure I saw that, because
yes. Yes, because the only reason I know that is because the playoff predictions for the first game of round 2 were able to get posted.
Oh, right. Of course. I didn't make that connection at all. So because the index isn't updated with the games, so I can't see actually who's moved on, and I kind of forgot. It's Calgary, Edmonton, New England, West KP, right? Pretty sure.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay. And the only reason I know that is because the coincidentally, every team but New England, we did the playoff predictions to be the first game of the first round of the sim.
Right.
And all of the wrong teams won the first game minus the Wolfpack. So everyone was pretty salty about that. Anyway, sorry guys.
Yeah. Okay, so should we start with, let me pull the standings back up. Is that the? Oh God, I'm so terrible at this. The East. Wait, I forget which one's which. And I'm not. So yeah, the East would be us, and West is Calgary, Edmonton. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the East, I guess, which is New England and West KP. I always do that, West KP. I don't know why I do that. Instead of abbreviating the entire thing or saying the entire thing, I say West and then abbreviate KP. Anyway, so I think it's probably a pretty close matchup. They've got better top end players, I would say, because their best players are very, very high TPE compared to ours. We have the advantage in goaltending, but probably no clear advantage anywhere else. Their clear advantage would be defense, I believe.
Yeah, I think our forward strength is relatively similar.
Yeah, I'd say so. Let me pull up their roster really quick because I know they have a lot of quite high TPE players. Of course, PLL, the Pierre-Luc Laflamme, Mouché's player, who is the free agency pickup for them. He's 1,600 TPE forward. Smirnov, or Ote, is almost 1,500 as well, but I'm not sure if he's playing D this season or not. He was playing D, I think, the last 2 seasons, or maybe even 3. I'm not sure if he still is or not. Let me take a look. Sorry for the dead air. He is still playing defense. Let's see. Maria Maximova is up there now with 1,200 TPE, another defenseman. Slappy McDoodle, I believe he's a forward again after, or do they keep him in defense? Yeah, they put him back up at center. So he's a forward at 1,350. Of course, Rice, Jed Lauren, 1,500. Bojo, 1,700 D. Big Z, still at 1,500 center despite regression. And Pettifer, 1,100, 1,160. So they've definitely got high-end players. But I think they fall off a bit after that. And then, of course, Matt Lewis-Flood, their goalie, is not quite to that level of being a top-tier goalie yet in terms of TPE. I don't know how his performance has been throughout the season, but just by TPE count, he's kind of still a season or 2 away from being what I would call like a solid SHL player. His roster page shows 770 right now, which is a bit low.
I think that's actually one of the things that makes this series interesting is that I think had Wes Kendall not had sort of the changing of the guard in goaltending, I don't think we would have been able to pass them. I think we're just a couple seasons out, and I said this last episode too, but I think we're still a couple seasons out on the Wolfpack from real sort of across the board TPE depth. We have some high TPE players and then a lot of sort of middling TPE players who are all active still. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things that's going to make this series really good. Should be a fun series to keep an eye on. And then there's also the fact that I think the teams are fairly similar in terms of sort of building philosophy, personality. So I think for as being a homer and someone on the Wolfpack, I think we probably would have matched up against Manhattan more like we did against Minnesota because we've got the depth to back it up there. But you know,
actually,
I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it should be close. I think it's really so hard to say because, I mean, we did beat a very good offensive team in Minnesota, and that was kind of our strength was our goals against was quite low. We have Tanner, and Tanner's very good, so that's helped us out a lot. And now that we have our lines figured out, we're looking a lot better. I'm actually a little surprised. I was looking at Matt Lewis-Flood's TPE, and I thought it was high. I really thought it would be higher. I was surprised to see him only at 770. Because he was super active when he came in. And I don't know if he slowed down or if I'm not sure what happened. Or even if anything happened, and it's just normal. It just seems, because EJ is higher than him, and she's a season behind him.
She's a TPE beast, though, relatively.
Yeah, true, I suppose. I thought, MLF was still a solid prospect, still going to be a good goaltender, but it's just, I expected to see him higher. Anyway, that's not really a point one way or the other. It's just mentioned it. So I think it's tough to call. I think I hesitate to make a prediction because I don't know. I feel kind of like I did the last series against Minnesota. My heart says New England, but I think my head says it's close. But I would probably give West Kendall the edge. I think they're just a little bit better than us offensively. And they've got some really good high-end players. And if they can kind of get, I don't know if they've figured out where to fit PLL in to their lines, because I know he struggled through the season a bit. But he's a really good player. And if they can get him going, it's a little scary.
Agreed. Yeah, I think part of our one of the things that I really like about being on New England, but one of the things that would make it difficult to GM for us is we have so much contract money tied up in active players. We're keeping our people active and we're really retaining them. So we were talking about it. It actually came up today in the suggestion box because I think 4-4 brought up the idea of possibly revisiting the contract tiers. And with the idea that I think that more sort of more of the top line players would be sort of more spread out in the league, and that one team wouldn't be able to pay a free agent $25 million. But looking at it, it's actually, and Eggy pointed this out too, but looking at it, it does actually affect more of the teams like us where we have enough retention, where we have people who are maybe not as active as some others, but are still doing their updates, are still doing their earning their TPE. So we do have to pay them the regular contract amount for their tier. So, and while I feel like many of us are sort of taking a smaller cut or less to be able to keep everybody, ultimately, I think that's the change that would probably have that effect the most.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry, I was spacing out a little bit there, but West KP did it again. WKP is kind of in a similar position too, with the exception of having more highly developed players. But in terms of retaining players and keeping people active, they're really good about that. And I know one of the things Bojo has said he's really proud of, what he's kind of done with that team in terms of taking a team that wasn't active and turning it into one that is highly active and has a really dedicated core group of players.
As well he should be. He's definitely the face of the franchise. Well, let's be real here. Pushkin is the face of the franchise. Bojo is the owner of the face of the franchise. So, Yeah. But yes, all kidding aside, Bojo has created a lot of loyalty, and that's not small. That's pretty huge, in fact. So I think that's great. They're a great team. They're a team that, should we fall to them, I would be disappointed, obviously, but I wouldn't be crushed. I have friends on that team. I like the atmosphere. It's one of the places that if a house dropped on me and I had to suddenly leave New England, I would be okay there. So, I think it should be a great sort of friendly rivalry game. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, they're good people. I like WKP. So I guess that leaves us with the other matchup, unless there's anything else to say there. I don't know if there really is.
I don't think
Not
so.
for me.
I think rooting for Game 7 is the...
Yeah. The other matchup, though, the West matchup is it's a really good matchup. This is like the two, I would say the two best teams in the league.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of like...
Yeah, it almost kind of sucks that they're in the same conference, because they keep taking each other out, where the victor really could be either one of them.
Yeah. Should be
disappointing for them, but good for the rest of the league, I think.
Yeah, this is the kind of matchup where I think, like in the sim, it's interesting, but in real life, it would be really exciting because it's these two super talented teams, both like just really, really good. And it'd be awesome to see a series like this, like play out live, going 7 games and just being like just really intense.
Large fan bases too. I know a lot of the players who have played for those two teams in the past still think of them fondly and want them to do well. So I think it's one of those things where, it's like, okay, your team's out, who do you root for next of the people who are still in? And I think many people would say, okay, either Calgary or Edmonton. They're kind of the big names in terms of historical team strength. Yeah.
And they both got some some of the kind of premier players in the league as well. With obviously, I guess, are they starting Toast now though? In
they are.
Edmonton, they are, aren't they? Huh.
Yeah, he and JY are splitting they split the season. I actually, embarrassingly, I did not know that and put Ido in for fantasy because I was like, oh, it's final year, it'll be great, and then didn't realize they were splitting starts. So thankfully JY saw it and sent me a note and was like, P.S. you realize we're splitting that, right? So there went my fantasy season. That was it. You had to use my drop ad and still wasn't good for much.
Yeah, well, you picked me too, though, and that wasn't great either. My season was pretty bad. I think you did, didn't you? You're one of the people that took a shot on me.
I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, I did not have a good season. I didn't even have the hits I thought I would. I thought I'd break 100 easy this season, but nope.
We softened you.
I guess. I don't know. We just couldn't figure out our lines for so long that it wasn't good.
Yeah, we really struggled with line. I mean, it's good because by the playoffs we know what works and what doesn't. Like we've gone through all the permutations, I feel like, but
that's kind of off topic though. So let's
keep going.
Calgary. So yeah, like Edmonton, their lineup is great. Theo Kane, Cervantes, Dean Colt, Chico Salmon. Chico Salmon's an older player, but still kind of one of the. Not a premier player anymore, but still a recognizable name. Obviously, JRT, Mueller, Sean Valevra, like just crazy top to bottom, good lineup. Even their third line is pretty solid with Jackson Reynolds and Karpatsov. And then, of course, Calgary's even more, I would say, has more depth and has the same kind of top-tier players. So it's like obviously Nuck has had an absurd season. Zoidberg, Issa himself, Alex Mack, Chris Johnson, Randleman, Nicholas Peterson. Just, really good.
The question is, who do you think is going to take it?
I don't even know who to. I would give, I think, Calgary an edge. I think they have a goaltending edge with Wong. I think he's still slightly better. I don't know what Toast is at for TPE.
Last I looked, it was 700 some. It was like the upper 700s.
I don't know if Wong is regressing yet. I don't think he is, and I'm pretty sure he's over 1,000 at this point. I don't even know where he's at. Yeah, 1163. So
he also is having fantasy-wise one of the best seasons.
Well, I mean, I'm sure a big part of that is because he's on such a stacked team, but
it is. But it's also there's been a lot of goaltending turnover, I feel like,
Yeah, that's true.
this season in particular. So I think it'll be Calgary, but I think it'll be close. I can see a 6 or 7 game series easily.
Yeah, it's so hard to predict something like this. It's just two really great teams. If I did more research, maybe, but this is kind of just off the cuff here. So if I was trying to be serious about it, I'd check head-to-heads, and I don't know. I know they were both extremely good in the regular season. I think there's a 1-point difference between them. I think that's right. If not, they were very, very close. I think they had the first and second highest goal differentials in the league. I want to say. We looked at this last week, and I kind of forgot, but kind of vaguely
It's all
remember
good.
things. So, but yeah, it's just a really, really good matchup, and I would take Calgary slightly, but I don't even know.
I think the other thing for me that not statistic based, just sort of fluff based. Edmonton, for whatever reason, has not been matching up against people all that well this season. Like they've had a couple of, although I guess you could say that for Calgary too, but I think that's one of the things that makes it tough is both teams have had a couple of oopses. I know that one of them, Seattle and Texas both snuck a few in past Calgary and Edmonton. There wasn't one strong, like crazy dominant performance from either team. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't, again, this is one of the ones where I feel like really could go either way. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I feel like Calgary has a little more. So, we'll see.
Yeah, should be interesting. I think I would be. I don't know. I think I'd be really stressed out if I was on either team, just because I think it's going to be close, but it should be fun. Should be fun to see who comes out on top, and then I think whoever wins that series is the favorite to win the finals, regardless of the outcome.
Agreed. I think the pressure is also kind of on Calgary to see if they can do a repeat, whereas if Edmonton sort of passes them, then it's sort of I think that'll buoy them into the last round. But
I was actually just looking, and it looks like Calgary is the one team that had fewer goals against than us in the regular season. So, yeah, they're pretty good.
Agreed.
So yeah, if I was picking a finals matchup, I'd probably take Calgary, and then coin toss, I guess, between West Kendall and New England. Probably West Kendall slight favorite in my mind.
I have to say, I'm a homer. We talked about this a little bit pre-podcast, but since our listeners were not privy to that, I get really stressed out if I pick against my team. So I don't. I believe in the Wolfpack. I think we'll do good things.
I try to be objective, and also I like to kind of bet against myself, so I can win either way, kind of.
If you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're right.
Way of looking at it, but yeah. Anyway, so I guess that's probably good. Do you have anything else to say about the round 2 matchup?
No, I think it'll be exciting. Hoping for some good PvPs.
Yeah, should be good. Although to be honest, I don't really pay attention to the play-by-plays. Although we didn't have one, I don't know if I probably wouldn't watch it live, but I'd probably go through it after the fact. Anyway, that's maybe a separate discussion. So let's go to the juniors. And there it is. So, okay. And we've already had the game 1 played for round 2. So let's first go to the matchups. Again, I forget which is East and West because I'm terrible. But we have Prince George and Kelowna.
West.
West. Okay, cool. And then we have Halifax and Montreal on the East. Then who would be? So with game one already played, this does kind of change things a little bit. So I guess we can't make just completely blind predictions, or not blind, but
I actually haven't seen it, so if you don't spoil me, I have no idea.
okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and hear from you then, because I already know the outcomes and what you think, and then yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I guess as we started with East, I will start with East again. And I'm sorry, who did you say it was? I know it's Halifax, and then who was the other one?
Montreal.
Montreal. Okay. Historically, I think that's a great matchup, but I think Halifax has the edge. I think they have newer, younger players who are really invested in the league and have really kept up with their updating. And I see a lot of Montreal is always very active, of course, so you see a lot of good things from them historically, but I think it's kind of Halifax's turn to have some success. They've been down for a couple seasons, they've been in a rebuild, and they've done their best to stack with free agents and fill in some holes in the roster. So, in absence of any other information, I'm going to go with Halifax on that one.
Okay.
So, spoil away.
Okay, so in game one, Montreal won. Let me take a look. I forget. I didn't actually look at that game as closely, so I don't know how it went down. Montreal Halifax, 3-2 in favor of Montreal. No overtime. Looks like Montreal pretty heavily outshot Halifax. Let's see. Penalties. Montreal was 3 of 7 on the power play, which is pretty good. Halifax was 1 of 4, so that's partially.
Oh, yikes. Okay, so special teams.
That's a bit of a reason for the differential in shots there, with the number of 3 more penalties going Montreal's way.
Yep. Okay, so yeah. I feel good about that. I think that if Halifax can kind of pull back from the penalties, they should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty even. Montreal, I think, was heating up going into or at the end of the regular season. I think they were a little bit hotter going into the playoffs. They did just barely beat St. Louis. Went to 7 games. I thought they would probably beat St. Louis, being a little bit hotter, but and they did, just in 7.
St. Louis is kind of an interesting team right now because they have several players who were looking like rookie favorites who suddenly just dropped off the face of the earth. Dos Diablo, for example, came in and lit it up, was the TPE leader, and then went inactive all of a sudden. But because he did that, he's still, on the roster, but they don't have to pay him the big money for inactive. So St. Louis has had a couple of sort of breaks like that, and while in the one sense everybody has that to some degree, I think that's sort of makes them a tricky candidate to get past. So I don't think the fact that the Montreal St. Louis, I don't think the fact that the previous series went to 7 for Montreal is necessarily indicative of their success. Just because St. Louis does have a couple of players who are in that situation.
Yeah. I don't know. I was a little bit surprised that St. Louis wasn't a little better this season. I mean, they were a pretty good team. They had a pretty good record.
Well, St. Louis did not have a ton of picks who stayed active. No. They didn't have a ton of picks, period, but they also didn't have a ton of picks who stayed active, which is tough when your draft class is so huge. That kind of means that if you have few picks and the few picks you have don't work out, you're slated for a rough season.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So this actually, I was looking at the SMJHL regular season standings. This is actually the 3rd and 4th teams in the oh god, I forgot already. East. So yeah, this is I mean, and this is kind of a really typical of the SMJHL, is just the complete lack of predictability. Like the two bottom teams in the East being, playing in the finals, and a team like Detroit, which looked like a kind of a juggernaut through most of this regular season, getting bumped off by Halifax, the worst team. And that's just typical of the SMJHL. There's just it's so unpredictable. It's so the playing field is extremely level. There's very few instances where you get a team that is just extremely dominant and another team that's very, very bad. For the most part, the playing field is pretty level. So you get a lot of these matchups that are just impossible to predict.
I would actually disagree with that a little bit, but only because I've been doing so many updates for juniors teams. I think in juniors, really very often, you kind of look at teams who drop off all of a sudden, really hit the skids, and you have teams who all of a sudden really take off. There's some sort of TPE threshold where I think it's making the difference, because towards the end of the playoffs, it's who's been updating more, which team's been more active, who's been doing their updates all season. So I think that the regular season is actually a terrible indication of predicting for playoffs, except that you can see who's been active, stayed active throughout the regular season, and who's been doing their TPE homework. That shows up, and I think that shows up consistently.
What I like to see most in the regular season is who gets hot right before the playoffs, because that's when their players start to kind of hit that point of being effective, being truly effective. That's the best indicator.
Yes, and that's also a sign of other good indicators. Maybe the GMs got some line changes figured out. Maybe they had some special teams issues in the beginning of the season, and by the end of the season they've worked out who they want on the PK and the PP. So if you're just looking raw at the regular season board and saying, okay, team stack ups, overall records, in that sense, if you're just looking at that, it does look very random. But if you take into account who's still, where the trajectory is, that's when you start to have some predictability.
I still think there's things that you can't factor in. Like, for example, us last season losing to Vancouver simply because we had two games where our goalie just completely laid an egg, and there's nothing we can do about that.
It is. And I think that's also a facet of your top tier players. You can't count on your top tier players because they're all at cap. So how they do against other top tier players is extremely random.
Yeah.
So even if you look at, okay, how are they doing on line chemistry, you sort of don't know how the top lines are going to square off against each other until it happens. So, but I think even in the juniors, at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think trajectory wins the game, and I think you can tell that by looking at depth. Who's continuing to have depth?
That's actually a really good point, because in the juniors, depth is really important. You can win with depth easily because the teams are
so small.
Yeah.
So if you're spreading out ice time, in a league where everyone's endurance is extremely low, if you're able to keep players' endurance low, spread out your ice time, stack your roster, and then not worry about endurance for juniors and just have them focus on sort of the scoring, the shooting, the puck handling, the skating, keeping those decision-making attributes high, I think that could be a real recipe for junior success. I do.
Yeah. The problem
is...
So I think it's...
Go ahead.
If you can get... The issue is draft class size. It's not typical for us to be able to fill rosters like that, to have depth like that, to have an active third line. It really wasn't. It's a thing every few seasons. We had it in S24, S25, and now this season we've got people with active third lines. Probably not full active fourth lines, but maybe active players on fourth lines. I haven't looked at other teams' rosters to see, but my rookie season, S24, I played fourth line. that's not a thing really anymore, and that
No.
certainly wasn't from S26 on till like S29. Like that just wasn't a thing.
No, that's that's been Kelowna's secret to success with Snoop Lion.
Yeah, he's like an active, I would say. Plays like an active.
I'll take it, right?
Okay, so let's actually talk about the other matchup then, because we've kind of like went a little bit sideways there in terms of not really talking about team-specific matchups. So the other matchup is Prince George and Kelowna. Now let's hear what you think first, and then we'll.
Okay, this one I'd forgotten, but I was spoiled on it. So I know that Prince George won the initial game.
Yeah.
However, Kelowna has a lot more depth, and Kelowna also has Wilson, who's been playing extraordinarily well. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think the first win there was a fluke, and I think Kelowna is going to catch up and pass Prince George.
Yeah,
so that's possibly sort of weird for a prediction where you already know one outcome, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I still favor Kelowna, and of course, obviously, part of it is bias. But if you look at the shot totals, it's like I still don't even know how we lost that game. Like in the first overtime, they had 4 shots, we had 15. Like, how did we not put one away in that first overtime period? Like, it's silly. So I mean, we almost doubled up their shot total, and you don't typically lose games like that unless your goalie is atrocious. And Ito JY hasn't been playing great, but with that kind of shot total, that shouldn't
happen.
It's so I mean, I'm still confident that we should take this series. I think we're pretty well ahead of anybody else in our conference. Prince George has actually had a pretty poor 10 games going into the playoffs. Last 10 games of the regular season, they were like 2-7 or something like that. Really pretty bad. I forget. I actually looked at it and I forgot. They were 3-7 in their last 10 of the regular season. So that's not a good sign. So I still think it's us. I hope it would be pretty tough to lose again, especially since we are so far ahead, I think, of everybody else in that conference. But that's just, again, that's kind of the nature of the juniors, I think. Upsets like that can happen. And so we'll see.
There's also, to some degree, Kelowna has not had a ton of luck signing free agents.
Well, this
so
season
sometimes
just didn't have cap space.
It's been better.
Yeah.
Right. But even then, the Kelowna made the decision to pay all of their actives a max contract, even though that meant they would not be able to sign some free agents, which I think now I'm hoping for them that's going to turn out to have been the right call. I think it will have been, and I think especially because that money often means that some of them can keep training, especially when your training fee, your max training fee for juniors is only $500K.
Yeah.
So when you're taking that out of $2 million, it's not that bad, especially if you do your first article, first bonus. That's where the teams who have the take a chance on some of the true rookies do well, is the true rookies get those first boosts over some of the recreates. Although, looked at that way, the recreates usually, never mind, that's stupid. The recreates have plenty of money, so they don't worry about it.
Yeah, usually.
Not always, but
I like the idea of giving new members the max contract regardless. I guess for recreates it could go either way. But for new members, I think my thought was always why wouldn't you give them the most possible? Just to keep them active, to keep them, I don't know, give them, I don't know, I just always felt like I had no reason not to give them the max. Now, I never had to deal with a draft class this size, but so that's a little different. And obviously, like, it would have been smart, I think, to try to at least give your recreates a little bit less, but I absolutely think it's the right call to give new members the max amount. just to give him a little boost to begin with.
Agreed. I think I feel the same. The only thing I might have done differently would be I might have reached out to some of the new players and asked how they felt about it. Because I think it's obviously you have such a short turnaround that's hard to say that's even feasible. But I think your rookies that you've drafted higher and have been really active, I think I would reach out to them and ask how they feel. And I'd say, okay, really be honest with me. Would you rather sign more free agents, or would you rather guarantee that everybody on the team is able to finish out their seasonal updates? And the only reason I say is sometimes these who come in hot and then bust, and then the max contract, that sucks. But again, I think I'd still, on the whole, except in draft classes that are this large where you have to make choices like that, I think it makes sense to not sandbag, to just go ahead and pay everybody the max.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily like wrong or bad not to give players the max contract. It's just my kind of preferred method.
No, it's a strategy decision. It's a strategic decision. Are you banking on them staying for 4 weeks and using up all that money, or are you banking on, some of them will stay active but can pay their own way, and some of them will go inactive and then you haven't given them that much? I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer.
No, it's just it's hard to tell. And SMJHL is weird like that too, because you have when you're looking at like scouting players, you have nothing to go off of, or not nothing, but in a lot of cases you have almost nothing to go off of, or very, very little. And so
sometimes you have a matter of days, and that's it.
Exactly. And along that kind of the same thought process, we have if players go inactive, like I always felt that it was kind of my job to try to keep players active as an SMJHL GM, but there's only so much you can do. Some players are just going to go inactive. Some players aren't going to like the site. There's only so much you can do, and there's no way to predict that really. I mean, you can predict. It's so tough because some people start so hot and then burn out, and other people start slow and then pick up and become extremely good players. And it's just there's very, very little you can do, and so you just kind of have to take your best shot.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting aspect is when people come in with friends. Are their friends the people who are keeping them active, or does it, like, for example, what's his face's brother, Hippo's brother? People were kind of high on him because they thought he might be the next super active star, and he just really didn't care for the site. We actually talked about it the other day. He said, you know what? I like playing hockey. I don't like faking hockey. So it wasn't for him. So I think it's tricky to predict who will, even if you come in knowing them, I think it's tricky to say who will and won't take to the site.
Yeah, it's impossible. But you do your best.
Yep.
All right, so that's pretty well off topic there now, but I think we covered.
Anyway.
So my favorites would be Montreal and Kelowna.
And I'm going to go Halifax and Kelowna. And I think I might be wrong on Halifax, but I'm going to go for it. Why not?
It's stuff. So yeah, there we go. I really hope Kelowna makes it. I really, really do.
I know, especially after... I want the rookie. I want the ones who were rookies last year who tasted Vancouver and were left wanting more. Really, really hope for them that it turns out well. Of course, I selfishly hope for me it turns out well too, because they're my alum team and I would love to see them have the cup. But I really, for the people who stayed through the the really heartbreaking loss. I want them to lift the cup, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Although not necessarily for that reason specifically. It's just kind of a bonus. But it's just, I love Kelowna. It's my team forever. So.
Yep. Go Knights, go.
Yep. So do we want to do questions now? We're at about 45 minutes. So.
Yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, let's get some questions. The leftover questions that we had from Jenny and the one from Clardy. We'll go. Do you want to go SHL related or non-SHL related first? We have one that's not related and then two that kind of are.
Let's take the one that's not related and get it out of the way first.
Okay. So Jenny, and this question's ridiculous, asks, marshmallows on your hot chocolate or nah? I haven't had hot chocolate in so long. I never really cared one way or the other. I would probably say nah, I guess. If no, I'm fine without them. It's fine. I don't really care.
I love them, but only if I can eat them. But if I can't eat the marshmallows, then generally I can't also have the hot chocolate. So depends on what's in them. But yes, theoretically, hardcore marshmallows all the way.
Are they like a dairy thing, or is that? I don't even know what marshmallows.
Sometimes it's the real ones. The real ones are made of marshmallow, like those big cattails. It's like this sticky stuff, and then sugar. But they're that's where the name comes from. But if they're and actually interestingly, like the Kraft does it that way. They don't like add milk or whatever. But some of like some of the grocery store marshmallows or whatever use some stuff as a thinner that I can't have. Some preservative I can't have. So it depends. I'm allergic to the world. It happens. So yeah. So the hot chocolate is a dairy thing. That's almost always a dairy thing because most people water down cocoa with milk, even if they're doing it in powder form. Sometimes, especially if they're doing it in powder form. So like Swiss Miss is a hardcore no. But that is okay because I am fine with just Hershey syrup and hot almond milk and make it myself.
See, I don't really like hot drinks. Not a fan.
I love it when it's cold. I actually like make my own hot chocolate mix and I put a little bit of cayenne pepper in it, so it's more like Mexican hot chocolate. Super good, and when you have it's especially good when you're sick because it's I know warm and you're freezing and and it's that sugar hit, so it's a little bit of calories, but then it's also got the cayenne in it, so it clears the sinuses. Nice. So I'm a huge hot chocolate fan. I just have a big sweet tooth, period. So yes, marshmallows.
Okay. So that's that question. Let's go next. So her second question, and this is back to SHL related. If you could change one thing about how the SHL is run, what would it be? Do you have an answer for this right away, or?
I do, actually. And this is a less maybe specific answer than you're looking for, but I am really, really sick of so many things on the SHL being uncodified, being just tribal knowledge. I've tried in the admittedly limited scope of positions I've had to sort of leave behind me a manual for the people who are going to step into it next who don't know what they're doing. Because nobody knows what you're doing. It's just you learn things about the league as you go. There's some things that we actually talked about last time in terms of how we bring new people onto the site that I think could be further improved just for retention purposes. So there's if I had to choose one thing, it would be that globally. I wish more stuff was written down in terms of either steps of how to do it or wish there was less ambiguity in a couple places So that would be my number one.
Okay. Mine's actually sort of similar. It's related to player creation and kind of your first steps as far as like setting up your your update thread, and kind of that very first thing you do when you create your player. You go to the that little like what is it, survey, or my first PT, that thing.
Yep. Oh yeah, that thing is wordy as all get out. That needs to be changed.
It needs to be changed. But what I would like to see, and because when I came in, I used a YouTube video guide of how to do all that stuff, and it was actually really good. But when I did it, it was outdated, and so I imagine it's even more outdated.
Outdated now. Yeah,
I'd like to see somebody either from like the rookie mentor. I don't know if there's some kind of like a new player other thing than the rookie mentor committee, but somebody who kind of manages or takes care of that video and keeps it up to date and just keeps it current, because that would be so easy to get people just to watch a YouTube video and kind of follow along the steps and do all those things. Create their player, create their update thread, go through that my first PT.
That was actually that was a project I had thought about taking on myself, and I think I still am eventually going to do that. But embarrassingly, since you're doing all the behind the scenes with the podcasting, I don't know how to record YouTube video, but that's something I could definitely look into. But I agree with you. I actually also would like the video, whoever does the video and redoes it, if that's me or if that's somebody else, I'd like to have it be run on a script, because when I opened the video, it was a lot of, like this podcast, it was a lot of chatter that was not, there were things that weren't sort of explicable to somebody who's brand new to the site. There were some things that were very hastily thrown in of kind
of, oh, by the ways kind of things. I don't really remember.
So there was some talk about why you don't put points in discipline and penalty shot, and so there were some little like heads up. Hope you caught that. I'd like it to be run off of a script where the person walks you through like what does each stat in the template means. And I think, in fact, I actually think the easiest way to do it would be to take Dangle's guide and do essentially a video version of it. To have someone literally walking through and creating a sort of a Joe Smith fake player from scratch like the original did. Because I think Dangles brings up a lot of salient points and does it in a very organized way. And then there are some other tidbits that didn't get thrown in that should have been in the original. There were some things, redistribution wasn't mentioned, that don't worry too much about how your build looks, because you can take advice from your GMs once you're drafted and redistribute to more suit your build or to more suit the team. The free strength and weakness change isn't particularly well advertised. So I think that could have been mentioned in there as well, where it's, okay, here are the basic, here's where to look for what each stat means in the sim. B, here's sort of a guide to choosing a good weakness. So on that note, I'd also actually like to see, there's been some talk about it on and off, and it's on and off to the point where I don't think it's actually going to get done. But there's been some talk about really looking at some of the templates and revisiting them, particularly for defensemen. But all the templates really could be adjusted like that. So I think it'd be interesting.
It's not. I think it was Tanner and Briss, is that right? Volkova?
Yes.
Okay, their podcast. They were talking about this too, and they're exactly right. It's not easy creating a new player here.
No.
Stuff is kind of all over the place, and it's there's so many forums. Like when I first got here, there's just so much. I was so intimidated by the number of forums and threads, and just like, oh my God, what am I doing? And so having something like that was really helpful, even if it wasn't great. And it is a kind of a big job to do something like that and to do it well. So I don't know. It's not like a desperate need, but it'd be really, really nice. And then we could send that out with our, intro.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that could be embedded on that, like the Reddit recruiting posts and stuff.
Yeah, or I mean, just that automated send out that.
Yes, the meet and greet.
Yep. That kind of thing. Be nice for that. But I realize it's like this would be a big job, and so I'm not really asking for somebody to undertake that. And then the other part of it, the first kind of go through would probably be big, just getting it done, but then maintaining it, I don't think would be that big a deal. Especially if you recorded it in pieces.
Well, 1 and 2, I think that I feel like we've sort of gotten to the point in the league where I'm hoping that there shouldn't be that many changes. You know what I mean? We've done the big, barring a huge revision of a template or exactly what happened to make it outdated, which was some of the forums getting moved around and then the update scale changing. The change of the update scale is the big reason why it's not relevant anymore. There's been even more that's been outdated past that because there's been some work done by the rookie committee to make some things better. So for example, the very old your first PT and updating your player post doesn't link to Dangle's guide, which is tremendous. And I think that's that's something that could be correct. It's one of those things where it's okay, do you correct the small thing or do you just redo it? And I think it's at the point where it just needs to be redone. And there are only so many hours in my day, but I would like to take that on. That would be something that I think would be a help and sort of welcome. And it's actually one of the things, it's been sitting on me for a while and I've been kind of thinking about it, but I had some other stuff. I had some update babies to look after, do some audits for this season. So, it is what it is. Yeah.
There's a lot of little stuff that could be done, but for me, I think the biggest one is getting new players in and having them, helping them to figure it out early. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so that's important to site health. So
yeah. So I guess that kind of answers that. Yeah, we're good. We can move on to the last question, if I can find it. There it is. This is Clardy's last question that we skipped over because it was draft related. And where do you think New England will draft? And I guess this we're talking about probably when you say where. Do you think probably positionally, like forward, defense, goalie, or?
I actually, I think this is multiple questions. Geographically, which juniors teams are you pulling from? He asked a question that was similar to that with one of the others. Oh, really? Where in the rounds do you think you go? Do you see any trades maybe being made? Where, in terms of positionally? Where in terms of sort of are you excited? Are you looking forward to who's coming in for you? Where in terms of are you taking a bunch of Reddit people or are we going hardcore Illuminati? Any of those, Clardy.
Yeah, I think
specific.
The way I read it is like where, meaning where in terms of like team need, where do we need players? I think that's how I read it because I think the other questions are less interesting personally. So that's how I'm going to answer it. I think defense is our probably biggest need. I think
I agree with that.
As long as we kind of hang on to our forwards, I think we're in a good spot. We're not great, but we've got developing players, and we've got some players kind of on the cusp of being solid. We've still got Russell and Bure and Blake Sherrill's still pretty decent. Makinen's pretty good. I'm on the edge because I'm a power forward, so I'm like a crappy version of an actual forward. And then we've got a lot of up and comers. So I think we're in a pretty good spot. Forward, defense, we've got Eggy and oh god, I know there's one other. My
Jenny.
brain is Anchorage. What's this player's name? Oh god, this is embarrassing. Because he's like a 1100 TPE or something. Oh, I gotta look.
Tara?
Benjamin Reed. Oh god.
No. Okay. Oh. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I mean he's basically. I think technically he's active because he like logged in once recently.
Yeah, he's dropped by to say hi, and that he had a new baby girl on the way, or already happened. I can't remember.
Something along those lines. I forgot. I know he
New baby in the house.
Approved his regression because I think Eggy posted it last season because he was not around. So he popped in and said like, "Hey, this is fine," because I was still the updater back then. So yeah, we got those two at defense, but that's kind of it. I mean, Morinov's a good defensive defenseman, but that's kind of all he is because of his where his TPE's at in his build. So
yeah, Morinov is only semi-active, and Landvik does not have enough TPE yet to be really counted as one of the first liners.
Yeah, and Morinov's build works because he does what he does. He's very kind of like a defensive defenseman. He does that one thing.
Stay at home. Yep.
Yep. And
he does one thing. You had one job.
I don't know how Landvik's build is. I'm looking at it right now. It's still pretty. Yeah, it looks pretty in flux, and she's got a lot of points in checking. So that kind of puts her a little bit behind the curve in terms of skill. But yeah, so she's still got a little ways to go. So yeah, I think defense is where we could use a little bit of help. We could use another prospect because after those four, honestly, we don't really have anything. Pomery's there, and I guess he had a decent season. So
yeah, my only the only reason I don't think that is quite as an interesting question for me is because I know that this is true for Lil, and I think it's also true for Eggy. Their sort of drafting strategy is less to take the positional need right away and more to look at the overall sort of personality and fit of the people towards the top who are really active. So even if they maybe don't match up positionally with our exact need, maybe if they don't fill those defensive holes, I think they sort of take them as futures and insurance and figure if we keep people active, keep people happy, the team will be healthy. And then obviously we always prefer not to make trades, but if trades happen, it is what it is. We trade for somebody who's active and proven rather than trying to bank our positional hopes on a rookie who we don't know is going to stay or not. So I think a lot of it depends on how the draft class shakes out. So I think that's the only reason why for me it isn't as quite I think who is more interesting question than where, personally. Yeah. But
I agree. I think that's definitely the case, is they'll look as much or probably more at the person as they will at the position/player. And I kind of agree as a it's different in the SMJHL, but that was as much a part of kind of my scouting process was the because you're in this. I talked to this is one of the big points I tried to drive home when I was trying to get ESA to take me in my draft, is that I know that GMs you're drafting a player, but even more than that, you're drafting a person to your locker room, and that's I think probably more important. In the overall scheme of things.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with you there. But is the way the question's worded, I think that's kind of what he's asking. Where positionally? If you're looking at where, like, people-wise, I have no idea. I don't know. At this point, the pyramid scheme has reached, I think, a stage where Lil doesn't really have as much of familiarity
critical
with the people.
mass.
Yeah, so we don't have this inside or as much inside as I think we did in the kind of early days of the recruits.
Yeah, I can tell you that where we've brought people in the most who we sort of know is Halifax, Kelowna again, and Montreal. Those we usually pull people from those three locker rooms for whatever reason. Halifax is a new addition, but Prince George has also been a pull. Except that one of our Prince George people, with the two we've had in the past, Lizzie got traded, and Omelette went inactive. So, so Prince George was once there, but I think that's been replaced by Halifax with some of the new kids going there. The new kids.
Yeah.
So, but we look at everything, obviously. I think there's a couple of I know there's a couple people who said that New England is their first choice team who aren't on any of those teams. So obviously when you say, where you'd like to be number one, that's a hard case for looking at you as a potential yes, depending on how the stuff shakes out. But I think it's nice for this draft class because I think there's so many good players, but it has thinned out a little bit. So I think it's going to be difficult to go too wrong here. So I'm hoping that it'll be sort of a pleasant, low-pressure draft. We'll get some more people. We like them. They fit in well. I'm not worried about that. Would I be panicking as a GM and scrambling? Probably. But I think this is one of those cases where I think it's also partially because we've had so many new rookies that the personalities are all a little bit clearer of who's in, who's out. The rookies are all closer to each other, for one. So I think it'll be a good season in terms of the seniors teams draft juniors who fit into those locker rooms. I'm not concerned from that standpoint.
Yeah. So I guess we're pretty good on time right now.
Yeah, I think that's it. Do we cover everything we want to talk about?
I think so, unless there's anything we want to add. I'm not... the only other things we could potentially talk about would be... I know we talked about maybe doing some draft, looking at the SHL draft class this season, but at this point that would take up way too much time, and we're already a little bit over an hour. And not only that, but I'm not really prepared, so there wouldn't be a whole lot to talk about other than kind of TP counts.
Yeah, I'm not ready. Plus, I think that's more fun in the next couple of weeks where we know who's in, who's out. We have less to talk about for the seniors playoffs and juniors playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think we're good.
Yeah. Let's call it, I guess, and pick it up again next week. So if you listened, thank you. This one's shorter than our last two, so you're welcome.
We're taking community advice.
Yeah. No, really, though. Thanks for listening if you are listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.